Picture this: you're standing on solid ground, gazing out at the endless blue of the ocean. But what if I told you that beneath those waves, entire mountains lie hidden, their peaks swallowed by the sea? Not just rocks and cliffs, but lost worlds, forgotten civilizations, and secrets locked away for thousands of years. This is the haunting reality of our planet's submerged peaks, silent witnesses to Earth's ever-changing story. From the legendary ruins of Atlantis to real-life underwater ranges that once scraped the sky, these drowned giants hold clues to mysteries we're only beginning to unravel. Think about the last time you dipped your toes into the ocean. The water seems eternal, unchanging, but the truth is far more dramatic. Over millennia, rising seas have consumed vast landscapes, turning towering mountains into underwater relics. Ice ages melted, coastlines shifted, and entire cultures vanished beneath the waves, leaving behind whispers in the form of sunken temples, fossilized forests, and ancient tools buried in the abyss. These aren't just geological oddities, they're time capsules, preserving moments when humans walked where fish now swim. So how did these mountains drown? And what can their stories teach us about our planet's past and its future? In this journey, we'll dive into the forces that reshaped Earth, from tectonic collisions to catastrophic floods. We'll explore eerie underwater monuments like Japan's Yonaguni, debate the fate of lost lands like Doggerland, and even uncover how Aboriginal oral histories predicted scientific discoveries of submerged caves. This isn't just about rocks and water, it's about humanity's fragile place in a world that's constantly rewriting itself. So take a deep breath. We're about to plunge into the deep, where every ripple on the surface hides a mountain's worth of secrets below. The ocean doesn't just hide shipwrecks and lost treasure. It conceals entire mountains, their peaks now silent beneath the waves. But how does something as massive as a mountain vanish underwater? The answer lies in Earth's restless nature, where geology and climate conspire to reshape continents. Picture this: tectonic plates, those colossal slabs of Earth's crust, are constantly shifting. When they collide, they thrust land upward, creating towering peaks. But over millions of years, those same forces can pull land apart, causing it to sink. Take the Hawaiian Emperor Seamount Chain, a line of underwater mountains stretching across the Pacific. These were once volcanic islands, but as the tectonic plate carrying them drifted, they cooled, contracted, and gradually slid beneath the waves. Yet tectonics isn't the only force at work. Imagine standing on a coastline 20,000 years ago during the last ice age. Glaciers towered over continents, locking up so much water that sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower than today. Land bridges connected continents, and mountains now submerged stood dry, their slopes covered in forests or grasslands. Then, as temperatures rose, the ice melted and the seas rushed back in. Places like Doggerland, a vast fertile plain between Britain and Europe, disappeared beneath the North Sea, taking entire ecosystems and human settlements with it. This wasn't a slow process either. Some studies suggest sea levels rose as fast as 10 feet per century, drowning coastlines within generations. But how do we know these mountains and lost lands exist? Modern technology lets us map the seafloor with astonishing precision. Sonar systems send sound waves plunging into the depths, bouncing back to reveal ridges, valleys, and even ancient river channels carved into submerged peaks. In the Caribbean, sonar uncovered the submerged Muertos Trough, a massive underwater valley flanked by drowned mountains. And it's not just geology. Underwater archaeologists use these tools to spot human-made structures. Off the coast of India, divers found stone walls and pottery near what's believed to be the sunken city of Dwarka, matching descriptions in ancient Hindu texts. Erosion plays its part too. Over millennia, wind, rain, and waves wear down mountains, turning them into sediment that sinks or gets carried away by currents. The Baltic Sea's Ancillous Lake, once a freshwater basin, was breached by rising seas around 8,000 years ago. Saltwater surged in, eroding cliffs and drowning hills, leaving behind the jagged archipelago we see today. Even now, climate change accelerates this process. As glaciers melt and seas rise, modern coastal mountains like those in Alaska or Norway face the same fate as their ancient counterparts. What's astonishing is how these submerged peaks preserve snapshots of the past. Coral reefs grow on their slopes, locking away clues to ancient climates in their limestone skeletons. Underwater caves, like those in the Yucatan Peninsula, hold the bones of extinct animals and early humans, untouched for millennia. Each discovery rewrites our understanding of Earth's history, proving that the ocean floor isn't just a graveyard for mountains, it's a living archive waiting to be read. Legends of lost civilizations swallowed by the sea have haunted humanity for millennia, blurring the line between myth and reality. Take Atlantis Plato's tale of an advanced island kingdom that vanished beneath the waves in a single day. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as pure fiction, until underwater discoveries began revealing eerily similar scenarios. Off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni Monument rises from the ocean floor, a massive, terraced structure with sharp angles and stair-like formations that defy natural explanation. Some argue it's a geological quirk, while others see the handiwork of a prehistoric culture, now lost to rising seas. The Mediterranean hides its own secrets. Near the Greek island of Zakynthos, archaeologists found an ancient paved road, columns, and pottery fragments 30 feet underwater, remnants of a settlement dating back 5,000 years. Could this be a fragment of a larger, forgotten civilization? Even more compelling is the story of Helaik, a Greek city obliterated by an earthquake and tsunami in 373 B. Ancient writers described its sudden submersion, and 2,000 years later, divers rediscovered its ruins buried under coastal sediment, just as the legends claimed. But why do so many cultures share flood myths? The Babylonians wrote of a great deluge in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Indigenous Australian stories speak of coastal lands swallowed by the sea. Even the Maya recorded tales of a world-ending flood. Scientists now suspect these aren't mere coincidences, they're cultural memories of real events. As Ice Age glaciers melted, sea levels rose nearly 400 feet, drowning coastal settlements worldwide. The proof lies in places like India's Gulf of Cambay, where sonar images revealed grid-like patterns and pottery shards 90 feet underwater, hinting at a city older than Mesopotamia. The most haunting question isn't whether these places existed, but what they can teach us. Off the coast of Cuba, a team using deep-sea sonar spotted symmetrical stone structures at depths no human could have built them unless the land was above water during the last ice age. Similar anomalies dot the Baltic Sea, where divers found a mysterious stone circle resembling ancient fishing traps. Each discovery chips away at the notion that advanced cultures only emerged after the seas stabilized. Perhaps civilizations rose, fell, and were forgotten long before recorded history began. What's clear is that the ocean guards its secrets fiercely. The Yonaguni Monument, the sunken ruins of Dwarka, even the bizarre Bimini Road in the Bahamas, they all whisper the same truth. Earth's surface is a palimpsest, constantly rewritten by water and time. And as technology peels back the waves, we're left to wonder how many more Atlantises lie waiting in the dark. their stories etched not in books but in stone beneath the tide. Beneath the churning waves of the North Sea lies a lost world, a sprawling landscape of rolling hills, dense forests, and river valleys that once connected Britain to mainland Europe. This was Doggerland, a thriving ecosystem the size of modern-day England, swallowed by rising seas around 8,000 years ago. Imagine herds of woolly mammoths trudging through its marshes, early humans casting fishing nets into its rivers, and forests so vast they stretched from what's now the Netherlands to the eastern shores of England. Then, in what might have felt like the blink of an eye to its inhabitants, the sea came rushing in, drowning everything in its path. How do we know Doggerland existed? The clues are scattered across the seafloor and buried in coastal sediments. Fishermen trawling the North Sea have hauled up more than just fish. They've pulled ancient antlers, stone tools, and even mammoth bones from the depths. In 2019, a team of archaeologists discovered a perfectly preserved harpoon point made from red deer antler, its jagged edges still sharp enough to pierce hide. These artifacts paint a picture of a resource-rich paradise where hunter-gatherers thrived. But the most haunting finds are the footprints. Off the coast of Norfolk, divers uncovered a set of human footprints pressed into ancient mud, now hardened and preserved under layers of sand. They're fleeting glimpses of lives interrupted, perhaps a family gathering shellfish as the tides began to rise. The land itself tells a story too. Core samples taken from the seabed reveal layers of peat, pollen, and even tree stumps, evidence of vast forests that once stood where ships now sail. One particularly eerie discovery is the Dogger Bank, a submerged sandbank that was once a highland area dotted with freshwater lakes. Sonar imaging has mapped its drowned rivers, their winding channels still visible like scars on the ocean floor. Scientists can even trace the moment disaster struck. Around 6,200 BC, a massive underwater landslide off Norway triggered a tsunami that sent walls of water crashing into Doggerland's remaining islands. Sediment cores show a sudden layer of sand atop the peat, a geological snapshot of the deluge that finished what rising seas had started. What does Doggerland reveal about human survival? Its story is a testament to adaptability. As the waters rose, communities retreated, following migrating game and shifting their settlements to higher ground. Archaeologists have found evidence of temporary camps on what's now the British coast, where Doggerland's refugees might have regrouped. Their tools evolved too smaller, more refined blades suggest a shift from hunting mammoths to fishing and foraging, a survival strategy forged by necessity. Even more intriguing are the genetic clues. Studies of ancient DNA suggest that some of Europe's earliest modern humans passed through Doggerland, leaving traces in the gene pool of later populations. The real mystery isn't just how Doggerland disappeared, but how much of its culture might have survived. Could the flood myths of ancient Europe, like the Welsh legend of Cantre Gwaelod, a kingdom lost to the sea, be distant echoes of this catastrophe? As climate change accelerates sea level rise once again, Doggerland's story feels eerily relevant. It's a reminder that the ground beneath our feet isn't as permanent as it seems, and that the ocean's hunger for land is as old as time itself. The Mediterranean isn't just a sun-drenched paradise, it's a graveyard of drowned mountains and forgotten islands, each with a story etched into the seafloor. Among them, the volcanic island of Santorini stands out, its crescent-shaped rim hiding a cataclysmic secret. 3,600 years ago, this wasn't just an island, it was a towering peak, home to the thriving Minoan settlement of Akrotiri. Then, in one of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded history, the mountain blew itself apart. The explosion was so violent it triggered tsunamis that devastated Crete, 60 miles away, and may have accelerated the collapse of the entire Minoan civilization. Today, diving into the caldera reveals jagged cliffs plunging into the abyss, a stark reminder of nature's power to erase entire landscapes. But Santorini isn't the only ghost in these waters. Between Spain and Morocco, just west of the Strait of Gibraltar, lies Spartel Bank. Now submerged under 300 feet of water, this limestone plateau was once an island the size of Manhattan. Some researchers believe it could be the real-world inspiration for Plato's Atlantis, swallowed by the sea around 12,000 years ago. Ancient texts describe Atlantis lying beyond the Pillars of Hercules, an ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar, and Spartel's location fits eerily well. Core samples taken from the seabed show evidence of freshwater vegetation, proving it was once dry land. Could this be the kernel of truth behind the myth? The Mediterranean's drowned peaks aren't just relics of disaster, they're windows into tectonic drama. The entire region sits at a crossroads where the African and Eurasian plates collide, crumpling the seafloor into submerged ridges and pulling others apart. Take the Hellenic Trench, a deep gash south of Crete where the African plate dives beneath Europe. Here, underwater mountains rise abruptly from the abyss, their slopes littered with the wreckage of ancient shipwrecks. Further east, the Anaximander Mountains, named after the ancient Greek philosopher, were once islands mentioned in classical texts. Now their peaks lie 1,000 feet underwater, their summits home to thriving coral gardens instead of goats or olive trees. What makes these submerged landscapes so captivating is how they blur the line between geology and human history. Off the coast of Sicily, divers discovered a field of mysterious stone pillars, their surfaces pocked by marine life. Some argue they're natural formations, while others see the handiwork of a prehistoric culture. Similar debates swirl around the Yavuz Trough near Turkey, where sonar revealed what appear to be the foundations of sunken buildings. The Mediterranean's violent tectonic history means entire sections of coastline have sunk or risen over centuries. The Roman city of Baiae, once a playground for emperors, now lies partially underwater, its marble columns home to octopuses instead of senators. As we map these drowned worlds, they force us to rethink the past. The Mediterranean wasn't always the postcard-perfect sea we know today. During the last ice age, sea levels were so low that islands like Malta and Sicily were connected by land bridges. Early humans may have walked from Africa to Europe without getting their feet wet. Then, as glaciers melted, the sea rushed back in, isolating communities and drowning their stories. Today, every new dive or sonar scan peels back another layer, revealing a Mediterranean far older and more mysterious than its azure surface, suggests a place where myths and mountains share the same watery grave. The Caribbean's crystal-clear waters hide a secret, an entire world of drowned mountains, their jagged peaks now blanketed by coral and silence. Take the Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize, a near-perfect circle of midnight blue water plunging over 400 feet deep. From the surface, it looks like a portal to another dimension, but dive deeper, and you'll find yourself inside a submerged cave system, its walls studded with stalactites that formed when this was dry land. These limestone formations are the key to the hole's origin. 12,000 years ago, during the last ice age, sea levels were low enough to expose this cavern. Rainwater seeped through the ground, dissolving the limestone and carving out vast chambers. Then, as glaciers melted and the ocean rose, the ceiling collapsed, flooding the cave and leaving behind the eerie sinkhole we see today. Not far away, the Cayman Trench tells a different story, one of tectonic violence. This 5-mile deep chasm in the seafloor marks where the North American and Caribbean plates grind against each other, pulling the crust apart like taffy. Along its edges, underwater mountains rise abruptly, some topped with hydrothermal vents spewing superheated water. These vents are oases in the abyss, supporting bizarre life forms like blind shrimp and ghostly white crabs. But the trench holds darker secrets too. In 2010, explorers found a submerged forest off the coast of Honduras, ancient mahogany trees preserved in the oxygen-poor depths, their trunks still standing as if frozen in time. This wasn't a slow drowning. Seismic activity likely triggered a landslide, sending an entire hillside sliding into the sea in minutes. The Caribbean's underwater caves are time capsules of climate history. In Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, the Sac-Acton system, a labyrinth of flooded tunnels, contains layers of sediment dating back to the last ice age. Paleontologists have pulled the bones of giant ground sloths and saber-toothed cats from these caves, creatures that fell through sinkholes when the caves were dry. Even more astonishing are the human artifacts, pottery shards, charcoal from ancient fires, and the skeleton of a teenage girl who died 13,000 years ago, her remains perfectly preserved in the mineral-rich water. These finds suggest humans explored these caves long before the seas rose, leaving behind clues to a lost world. What makes these submerged peaks so haunting is their duality. They're both graves and gardens. The same forces that drowned them also created thriving ecosystems. Coral reefs cloak the slopes of sunken mountains, their growth rings recording centuries of ocean temperature changes. And in the darkness of the trenches, species unknown to science cling to life, adapting to pressures that would crush a submarine. The Caribbean's hidden mountains remind us that the ocean doesn't just erase landscapes, it transforms them, turning catastrophe into cradle. Along the western coast of India, where the Arabian Sea meets the Gulf of Kutch, lies one of history's most tantalizing underwater mysteries, the lost city of Dwarka. For centuries, this ancient kingdom was thought to be pure mythology, a fantastical realm described in Hindu texts like the Mahabharata as a glittering metropolis with palaces of gold, ruled by the god King Krishna. But in the late 20th century, archaeologists made a discovery that shook the scholarly world. Beneath 40 feet of water, they uncovered massive stone walls, intricate carvings, and pottery fragments dating back over 3,500 years, physical evidence that Dwarka might have been very real. The key to this mystery lies in the ancient texts themselves. The Mahabharata describes Dwarka's catastrophic end in vivid detail, how the city was swallowed by the sea after Krishna's death, as if the ocean itself sought to erase its existence. Modern marine archaeologists found something chillingly similar off the coast of modern-day Dwarka. Sonar scans revealed a grid-like pattern of structures, some as large as football fields, buried under layers of sand and silt. Divers brought up artifacts that matched descriptions from the texts, stone anchors, jewelry, and even a seal engraved with a bull motif, a symbol associated with Krishna's dynasty. These weren't random shipwrecks or scattered ruins. They pointed to a planned, sophisticated settlement that met a sudden, violent end. What's even more compelling is the geological evidence. Core samples taken from the seabed show a distinct layer of marine sediment abruptly covering older terrestrial deposits, proof of a rapid inundation. Scientists now believe that around 1500 BC, a combination of rising sea levels and tectonic subsidence caused the land to sink, flooding Dwarka within a generation or less. This aligns eerily with the Mahabharata's account of the city's demise. But the real question isn't just whether Dwarka existed, it's how advanced this civilization might have been. The underwater structures show precise stone masonry, including interlocking blocks designed to withstand waves, suggesting engineering knowledge far ahead of its time. Critics argue that these ruins could belong to a later port city, not the legendary Dwarka. Yet recent discoveries keep tilting the scales. In 2022, researchers using 3D mapping identified a series of circular formations resembling the city's described concentric walls. Even more intriguing are the ancient river channels found nearby, now submerged, which match descriptions of the vanished Saraswati River, a holy waterway mentioned in Vedic texts that supposedly dried up millennia ago. Could these be the fingerprints of a forgotten golden age, one that blended myth and reality? The ocean here guards its secrets fiercely. Strong currents and shifting sands make excavation a challenge, and many areas remain unexplored. But every artifact pulled from the depths adds weight to the idea that Dwarka was more than legend. It was a thriving hub of trade, spirituality, and innovation, lost to a catastrophe that echoed across millennia. As technology peels back the layers of time, we're left to wonder how many other sunken kingdoms might lie hidden along India's coast, waiting for their stories to resurface. Today's map of Southeast Asia shows a scattering of islands: Java, Sumatra, Borneo, separated by deep blue waters. But 20,000 years ago, this was no archipelago. Instead, a vast continent called Sundaland stretched across the region, a lush, interconnected world twice the size of India. Imagine walking from modern-day Vietnam to Bali without getting your feet wet, through rainforests teeming with now extinct giants like stegodons, massive elephant relatives, and the elusive sunder-clouded leopard. This wasn't just a land bridge, it was a thriving ecosystem, home to some of the earliest human migrations out of Africa. Then, as the last ice age waned, the seas rose at a rate of up to 5 feet per century, drowning an area larger than Greenland and scattering its inhabitants like seeds on the wind. The proof of Sundaland's existence lies in the strangest of places: underwater river valleys. Sonar mapping has revealed the bones of ancient waterways crisscrossing the seafloor, their twisting channels now home to coral instead of freshwater fish. One such river, dubbed the North Sunda River, once carried water from the mountains of Borneo all the way to the South China Sea. Today, its submerged delta holds another clue: stone tools. In 2019, divers recovered hand axes and hammerstones from a site called the Java Sea Wreck, not from a sunken ship, but from a prehistoric campsite now 60 feet underwater. These artifacts suggest humans weren't just passing through Sundaland, they settled there, adapting to its forests and coasts long before the waves came. But it's not just human history that's submerged. Off the coast of Sumatra, marine biologists discovered a submerged peat swamp older than the pyramids, its layers packed with pollen from mangroves that once lined vanished shores. This black gold preserves snapshots of ancient climates, revealing how Sundaland's environment shifted as the seas rose. Even more astonishing are the animal remains. In caves now accessible only by scuba gear, researchers found the bones of tigers, rhinos, and orangutan species that today cling to survival on fragmented islands. Their presence in underwater caves suggests these animals retreated to higher ground as the waters advanced, only to be trapped in shrinking pockets of habitat. The real enigma is how this drowning reshaped human civilization. Genetic studies of Southeast Asia's indigenous groups trace their ancestry back to Sundaland survivors who fled to the mountains of New Guinea or the Philippines as their homeland disappeared. Some anthropologists believe this catastrophe may have spurred one of humanity's greatest adventures, the peopling of the Pacific. The same rising seas that swallowed Sundaland also forced communities to take to boats, eventually leading to the settlement of islands as far away as Hawaii and Easter Island. Even today, the region's flood myths echo this trauma. The Dayak people of Borneo speak of a great deluge that forced their ancestors into the mountains, while Javanese legends describe a world where the sea had no shore. What's left to discover beneath these waters? Off the coast of Malaysia, sonar has detected what appear to be stone structures near the submerged Luconia shoals, potential remnants of a prehistoric fishing village. Meanwhile, in the Gulf of Thailand, fishermen regularly haul up ancient pottery from depths that were dry land 12,000 years ago. Each artifact is a puzzle piece, hinting at a time when Southeast Asia's culture and ecology were woven together across a single, unbroken landscape. As technology improves, archaeologists may one day uncover Sundaland's equivalent of Doggerland's footprints or Dwarka's walls, proof that the ocean's greatest secrets aren't just lost worlds, but the missing chapters of our own story. Long before the turquoise waters of the Coral Sea separated Australia from New Guinea, a vast expanse of dry land connected the two, a lost world known as the Sahul Shelf. Picture a landscape of rolling savannas, dotted with freshwater lakes and cut by winding rivers, where giant kangaroos and marsupial lions roamed alongside some of the earliest human arrivals to the continent. This wasn't just a narrow land bridge, it was a thriving ecosystem the size of California, swallowed by rising seas between 12 and 7,000 years ago. Today, its remnants lie scattered beneath the waves, from the sunken coral gardens of the Great Barrier Reef to the labyrinthine caves of the Arafura Sea, each holding fragments of a story science is only beginning to piece together. What's extraordinary is how modern research aligns with Aboriginal oral histories passed down for generations. The Yolngu people of northern Australia speak of Barrelkoo, an ancestral homeland now beneath the sea, where spirits walk in underwater forests. The Gunditjmara tell of a time when their ancestors could walk to what's now Tasmania, a memory backed by geological evidence showing the Bass Strait was dry land until around 10,000 years ago. These aren't vague allegories, they're precise recollections. In 2020, marine archaeologists mapping the Northwest Shelf found submerged freshwater springs exactly where indigenous songlines described them, their locations preserved in stories for over 300 generations. Even the timing matches. Core samples reveal the shelf was fully flooded by 7,000 years ago, aligning with oral histories that speak of a great drowning after the last ice age. The real treasure lies in what the Sahul Shelf preserved. Off the coast of Western Australia, divers discovered an ancient coral reef system 200 feet underwater, its massive bombers coral mounds frozen in time. Unlike modern reefs that grow upward, these formations sprawl horizontally, their growth patterns revealing how sea levels rose in pulses rather than a steady creep. Further north, the underwater caves of the Sahul Shelf act as time capsules. In one remarkable find, paleontologists retrieved the skull of a diprotodon, a wombat-like creature the size of a rhinoceros, from a submerged cavern. The bone's position suggested the animal had fallen through a sinkhole when the cave was dry, its remains sealed in an air pocket for millennia until the ocean claimed it. But the most haunting evidence of human connection comes from tools. Near what's now the Montebello Islands, stone axes and grinding stones were found on the seafloor, their edges still sharp despite being underwater for 8,000 years. These weren't lost or discarded, they were left behind in what had been an inland campsite, now 60 feet beneath the waves. Even more telling are the shell middens discovered off Arnhem Land, piles of ancient meals now encrusted with coral, proving that coastal communities thrived here before the coastline itself vanished. What makes the Sahul Shelf unique is how its drowning reshaped an entire continent's ecology. As saltwater invaded freshwater lakes, it triggered mass extinctions among land animals while creating new marine habitats. The same caves that once sheltered megafauna became nurseries for tropical fish. their walls now adorned with indigenous rock art only visible to divers' handprints and animal figures submerged but untouched by time. This duality of loss and creation echoes in modern climate challenges, reminding us that coastlines have always been fluid and that the stories we tell about them might one day guide us through rising tides once again. Today, the frigid waters of the Bering Strait separate Russia from Alaska by just 55 miles, a narrow gap where icy currents swirl between two continents. But rewind 20,000 years and you'd be standing on dry land, gazing across a vast, grassy plain stretching as far as the eye could see. This was Beringia, a submerged world twice the size of Texas, where mountain peaks now buried beneath the waves once formed a bridge between Asia and the Americas. During the last ice age, so much water was locked in glaciers that sea levels dropped by over 300 feet, exposing a landmass teeming with life. Herds of woolly mammoths trudged through its valleys, saber-toothed cats stalked the shadows, and the first humans to set foot on the Americas likely walked here, following the trails of migrating game into a new world. The real wonder of Beringia isn't just that it existed, it's how perfectly preserved its secrets are. Beneath the floor of the Bering Sea, scientists have found layers of ancient soil still packed with grass seeds, pollen, and even the frozen remains of Ice Age giants. In 2012, a gold miner in the Yukon uncovered a near-perfect mummy of a baby woolly mammoth, its skin and hair intact, offering a glimpse of the creatures that once roamed this lost landscape. But the most telling clues come from the submerged mountains themselves. Sonar maps reveal a hidden range nicknamed the Beringian Alps, their slopes now draped in sediment but still showing the U-shaped valleys carved by glaciers. These peaks weren't just passive bystanders, they acted as a funnel, guiding both animals and humans along migratory routes that shaped the future of two continents. What's often overlooked is how dynamic this land bridge was. Beringia wasn't a static corridor but a shifting mosaic of ecosystems. During colder periods, it resembled the steppes of modern Mongolia, with hardy grasses supporting mammoths and bison. In warmer intervals, shrubs and wetlands took over, creating pockets of habitat for smaller animals like Arctic foxes and ground squirrels. This variability forced humans to adapt constantly, honing the survival skills that would serve them as they pushed deeper into the Americas. Recent archaeological work on both sides of the strait, like the discovery of 30,000-year-old stone tools in a remote Siberian cave, suggests some groups may have settled in Beringia for millennia, waiting for ice sheets to retreat before moving east. The extinction of Beringia's megafauna remains one of its greatest puzzles. Mastodon bones dredged from the seafloor show cut marks from human tools, proving our ancestors hunted these creatures. Yet climate change likely played an equally brutal role. As the Ice Age ended, rising seas flooded the land bridge, shrinking grazing areas and fragmenting populations. The last mammoths on Alaska's St. Paul Island survived in isolation until just 5,600 years ago, long after their mainland relatives vanished, their fossils found alongside evidence of dwindling freshwater supplies. Today, indigenous communities along the Bering Sea still recount stories of a time when their ancestors could walk to Asia, or of great beasts that swam away when the waters rose. Perhaps the most haunting legacy of Beringia lies in its DNA. Genetic studies reveal that all indigenous peoples of the Americas, from the Navajo to the Mapuche, share ancestry with a single population that crossed this land bridge. But newer research suggests there may have been multiple waves, some by boat along the now drowned coastline, hinting at a migration story far more complex than we once imagined. As warming oceans reveal more of Beringia's secrets, from submerged campsites to the bones of extinct camels, we're reminded that this vanished landscape wasn't just a bridge. It was a crucible where the interplay of ice, land, and human ingenuity forged the peopling of an entire hemisphere. Beneath the Pacific's tranquil surface, a fiery drama unfolds where mountains breathe fire even as the ocean tries to smother them. Off the coast of Hawaii, the Loi High Seamount rises 13,000 feet from the seafloor, its summit still 3,000 feet underwater. But this isn't just another dormant peak. It's a living, growing volcano, spewing molten rock through vents that glow like underwater bonfires. What makes Loi High extraordinary is its destiny. In 50,000 years, its relentless eruptions will push it above the waves, becoming the newest island in the Hawaiian chain. Right now, its slopes are a laboratory of creation, where lava meets seawater in explosions of steam and mineral-rich plumes, laying the foundation for future land. These underwater volcanoes are Earth's architects, reshaping the planet one eruption at a time. The Mariana Trench's NW Rota 1 is even more violent. Its crater belches continuous streams of carbon dioxide bubbles and molten sulfur, creating a surreal underwater geyser. But it's not just about destruction. When lava cools, it forms pillow basalt, bulbous rock formations that stack like submarine cobblestones, building new terrain grain by grain. The axial seamount off Oregon's coast has erupted 3 times in the past 20 years, each event adding height to its summit like a subterranean skyscraper under construction. What's truly astonishing is the life these fiery peaks sustain. Hydrothermal vents along their flanks, nicknamed black smokers, spew superheated water loaded with minerals. These toxic plumes should be lifeless, yet they're oases. Tube worms cluster around the vents, their red plumes absorbing chemicals, while blind shrimp graze on bacterial mats that thrive in the scalding darkness. Scientists found microbes here that survive at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, organisms that might hold clues to life's origins on Earth or even other planets. The Caribbean's Kikum-Jenny volcano proves these mountains aren't just remote curiosities. Just 5 miles off Grenada's coast, it's erupted 14 times since the 1930s, triggering tsunamis that rattled nearby islands. Monitoring systems now track its growls, a reminder that underwater volcanoes can be as dangerous as their terrestrial cousins, yet even as they threaten, they give. Off Iceland, the eruption of the Reykjanes Ridge in 2021 created new hydrothermal vents overnight, their mineral deposits attracting deep-sea miners and biologists alike. These peaks blur the line between land and sea, destruction and creation. Loi High's summit is already crowned with iron-rich lava rocks that rust into shades of orange and gold, a preview of the island it will become. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Pacific, thousands more seamounts smolder unnoticed, their eruptions lighting up the abyss like underwater fireworks. They remind us that the ocean floor isn't some static graveyard, it's a dynamic frontier where mountains rise, burn, and are born anew. Imagine a continent larger than India, with towering mountain ranges and sprawling valleys, yet almost no one knew it existed until 2017. This is Zealandia, Earth's 8th and most mysterious continent, 94% submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean. Stretching from New Zealand to New Caledonia, this lost landmass covers nearly 2 million square miles, yet its highest peaks barely break the surface as tiny islands. The discovery of Zelandia didn't just rewrite maps, it shattered assumptions about how continents form and break apart. Unlike other continents that sit high on Earth's crust, Zelandia is thin and stretched like dough pulled too far. Scientists believe it began tearing away from Australia and Antarctica 80 million years ago, its crust thinning as it sank, leaving only a skeleton of its former self. What makes Zealandia so fascinating are the clues it holds about supercontinent cycles. When the ancient supercontinent Gondwana fragmented, Zealandia drifted away like a slow-motion iceberg, carrying with it fossils of creatures that once roamed its shores. In 2020, researchers drilling into the seabed off New Zealand pulled up cores filled with pollen from ancient plants, evidence that this wasn't always an underwater realm. The samples revealed a landscape that once hosted rainforests and possibly even dinosaurs, now entombed under layers of sediment. Even more intriguing are the zircon's tiny, durable crystals found in Zealandia's rocks that date back over 500 million years. These minerals act as time capsules, proving this continent's crust is far older than the ocean floor surrounding it, a key trait that defines true continents. The submerged mountains of Zealandia tell a dramatic story of collapse and resilience. The Lord Howe Rise, a 1,000-mile-long spine now 2,000 feet underwater, was once a chain of peaks as impressive as the Andes. Sonar mapping reveals their jagged profiles, their slopes scarred by landslides that sent entire cliffs tumbling into the abyss. Nearby, the Chatham Riser Plateau, the size of California, was dry land 25 million years ago, its fossilized shark teeth and penguin bones hinting at a vibrant coastal ecosystem. But Zealandia's most tantalizing secret lies in its mineral wealth. Volcanic activity left behind deposits of rare earth elements crucial for modern technology, while methane seeps along its ridges suggest untapped energy reserves. The real puzzle is why Zealandia sank when other continents stayed high. The answer may lie in its unique geology. Unlike thick continental crust, Zealandia stretched too thin during its breakup, becoming more like a raft of lightweight rock floating on denser mantle below. As it cooled over millions of years, it grew heavier, gradually succumbing to the ocean's weight. Yet even drowned, Zealandia challenges conventions. Most continents are bordered by deep oceanic trenches, but Zealandia blends almost seamlessly into the Pacific floor, blurring the line between continental and oceanic crust. This ambiguity forced geologists to redefine what a continent actually is, leading to its official recognition in 2017. What remains undiscovered beneath Zealandia's waves? Off the coast of New Caledonia, underwater cameras have captured eerie limestone towers formed by freshwater springs when the land was above sea level. Further south, magnetic anomalies suggest buried mineral deposits that could rewrite the economic map of the Pacific. And then there's the question of life. Marine biologists recently found species of deep-sea coral on Zealandia's slopes that exist nowhere else, suggesting its isolation created a unique evolutionary cradle. As exploration continues, Zealandia reminds us that Earth's most profound secrets aren't always hidden in distant galaxies or dense jungles. Sometimes they're right beneath our boats, waiting in the quiet dark. The water lapping at Miami Beach's shores today isn't just a symbol of vacation paradise, it's a ticking clock. Scientists predict that by the end of this century, sea levels could rise by as much as 6 feet, swallowing entire neighborhoods and turning coastal skyscrapers into modern-day versions of Atlantis. But Miami isn't alone. The Maldives, a nation of 1,200 islands in the Indian Ocean, could vanish almost entirely, its highest point barely reaching 7 feet above current sea levels. These aren't dystopian fantasies, they're projections backed by decades of ice core samples, satellite data, and the grim lessons of drowned landscapes like Doggerland and Sundaland. The difference this time, we're not facing slow geological shifts, we're witnessing an acceleration fueled by human activity, with the ocean rising 3 times faster than it did just a century ago. What's chilling is how closely these future scenarios mirror past catastrophes. Take the Sunda Shelf, where rising seas forced early humans to abandon coastal settlements over centuries. Today, the same process is unfolding in places like Jakarta, Indonesia, where entire districts sink by nearly 10 inches a year due to groundwater extraction and rising tides. Archaeologists studying ancient sunken cities notice eerie parallels: crumbling foundations, saltwater contaminated wells, and the frantic construction of seawalls that ultimately failed. Venice's battle against Aqua Alta might seem romantic, but it's a preview of what coastal megacities from Bangkok to New Orleans will face: a choice between costly defenses or retreat. History offers brutal but valuable lessons in adaptation. The Polynesians, whose islands were constantly reshaped by rising seas, built floating villages and developed salt-resistant crops. The Minoans, after Santorini's eruption triggered tsunamis, relocated inland and diversified their trade routes. Today's solutions blend ancient ingenuity with cutting-edge tech. Miami is experimenting with porous pavements that absorb floodwaters, while the Netherlands, where 26% of the land already sits below sea level, pioneers amphibious homes that float during floods. The Maldives, meanwhile, is constructing artificial elevated islands like Hulhumalay, a reclaimed landmass built 13 feet above sea level as a refuge for displaced communities. Yet the most urgent lesson from drowned mountains and sunken cities isn't about engineering, it's about time. When Doggerland disappeared, its inhabitants had generations to adapt. Today's coastlines are changing at a pace that outstrips even the most ambitious adaptation plans. Louisiana loses a football field of wetlands every 100 minutes, and the Greenland ice sheet, which contains enough water to raise global seas by 24 feet, is melting 6 times faster than in the 1990s. The irony is bitter. We've mapped ancient submerged landscapes down to their fossilized footprints, yet we're still struggling to read the writing on our own walls. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't whether we'll lose land, but what we'll choose to save. The ruins of Dwarka and the Yonaguni Monument remind us that cultures leave markers behind: stone walls, tools, stories. What will future archaeologists find in our drowned cities? Glass towers toppled like dominoes, subway tunnels transformed into coral reefs, or will they uncover the remnants of seawalls built too late, proof of a civilization that saw the tide coming but hesitated until the water reached its doorstep? The answer depends on what we do now, in these decades when the ocean's hunger for land is no longer a geological curiosity, but a shared emergency. Exploring drowned mountains isn't as simple as strapping on scuba gear and diving in. The crushing pressures, pitch-black darkness, and sheer scale of these underwater worlds demand technology as advanced as the mysteries they're trying to solve. Take remotely operated vehicles, or ROV. These robotic explorers are the workhorses of deep-sea archaeology. Tethered to ships by fiber optic cables, they can plunge thousands of feet below the surface, their mechanical arms delicately brushing sediment off ancient artifacts while live streaming footage to researchers safe on deck. One of the most famous, Hercules, discovered a 2,000-year-old shipwreck in the Black Sea, so well preserved its wooden mast still stood upright, untouched by time or oxygen. But ROVs are just the beginning. Modern underwater archaeology leans heavily on 3D photogrammetry, a technique where thousands of overlapping photos are stitched together into hyper-accurate digital models. Off the coast of Greece, this tech reconstructed an entire Roman-era shipwreck down to the fingerprints left on its clay jars, allowing archaeologists to excavate the site virtually without disturbing a single artifact. Even more revolutionary is synthetic aperture sonar, which pulses sound waves across the seafloor to create images so sharp they can distinguish between a cannon and a coral-encrusted rock from miles away. In the Baltic Sea, this technology recently revealed a 17th-century Dutch merchant ship frozen in time, its cargo of spices still sealed in barrels. The real unsung heroes, though, are the deep-sea submersibles that carry humans into the abyss. Vehicles like Alvin, which explored the Titanic, or limiting factor, the first to reach the deepest point in every ocean, are engineering marvels. Their titanium hulls withstand pressures that would crumple a submarine, while robotic arms can pluck a single coin from the seabed without stirring the silt. But it's not just about brute strength. These subs are equipped with laser scanners that map ruins in minutes, a task that once took divers weeks. When DSV Shinkai surveyed the sunken temples of Japan's Yonaguni Monument, its lasers detected tool marks on the stone walls, reigniting debates about whether humans carved them over 12,000 years ago. Then there are the quieter innovations like isotopic analysis of underwater sediment, which can trace the origin of a single pottery shard to a specific clay pit hundreds of miles away. Or autonomous underwater vehicles, or OVE, that glide silently through the depths like underwater drones, their side-scan sonars painting pictures of lost cities hidden under layers of sand. In the Mediterranean, an AUV named Perseus mapped the ancient port of Pavloptri so precisely that researchers could identify individual streets and buildings, all without a human ever touching the site. But technology is only half the story. The pioneers who push these tools to their limits are just as remarkable. Take Dr. Robert Ballard, who swapped his famous discovery of the Titanic for a quest to uncover sunken Bronze Age trade routes. Or Dr. Kathy Sullivan, the first astronaut to walk in space, who then dove to the deepest point on Earth in the limiting factor, proving exploration knows no bounds. Then there's the late Dr. George Bass, the father of underwater archaeology, who in the 1960s invented the first rigorous methods for excavating shipwrecks, proving the ocean floor wasn't just a graveyard, it was a library. What's next for this field? Some teams are experimenting with artificial intelligence to sift through decades of sonar data, hoping algorithms might spot patterns humans missed. Others are developing soft robotics, flexible, tentacle-like arms that can handle fragile artifacts like pottery or human remains without causing damage. And in Norway, archaeologists recently tested a drone that sniffs for dissolved iron in seawater, a telltale sign of buried shipwrecks. The challenge isn't just finding these drowned worlds, it's preserving them. Looters with metal detectors and trawling nets destroy sites faster than researchers can document them. That's why projects like the Ocean Discovery League are training local divers from the Caribbean to Southeast Asia in basic archaeology, turning coastal communities into guardians of their own submerged heritage. Because every artifact recovered from these depths isn't just a relic, it's a voice from a time when mountains still stood tall above the waves, waiting for us to listen. Coral reefs don't just cling to submerged mountains, they transform them into living museums. Take the Darwin Mounds, a cluster of ancient peaks 200 miles off Scotland's coast, their slopes blanketed in cold water corals that have grown here for over 4,000 years. Unlike tropical reefs, these slow-growing lace corals record environmental changes in their skeletons like tree rings, preserving clues to everything from medieval ocean temperatures to volcanic eruptions halfway across the world. But their real magic lies in how they fossilize history. When corals die, their calcium carbonate skeletons pile up at a rate of about ½ an inch per century, gradually entombing whatever lies beneath, whether that's geological formations or human artifacts. Off the coast of Israel, archaeologists found a Phoenician anchor encased in coral, so thick its original wood was perfectly preserved inside, untouched by seawater or bacteria. These reefs aren't passive archivists, they're active defenders. The jagged contours of drowned mountains create turbulence that breaks wave energy, shielding coastlines from erosion. In the Caribbean, reefs growing on submerged volcanic peaks reduce wave force by up to 97%, acting as natural breakwaters for islands like Grenada. But their protective role extends beyond the living. When hurricanes scour the seafloor, ancient coral rubble, often the remnants of reefs that thrived when sea levels were lower, forms dense barriers that absorb impacts modern reefs can't withstand. Scientists studying Florida's underwater ledges discovered coral debris from the last ice age, still diverting currents away from fragile shorelines today, a geological legacy outlasting human-built seawalls. The question is whether these ecosystems can safeguard our past as effectively as our present. In Indonesia's Spermond archipelago, local fishermen still use centuries-old stone traps hidden beneath coral canopies, their structures intact thanks to the reef's ability to buffer strong currents. Meanwhile, in the Gulf of Mexico, coral colonies have grown over Spanish shipwrecks, their branches shielding delicate porcelain cargo from looters' dredges. But this relationship is fragile. Deep sea mining and bottom trawling rip through reefs like bulldozers, exposing buried artifacts to oxygen and decay. A tragic example lies off Norway, where trawlers destroyed a coral-covered Viking shipwreck before archaeologists could document it, scattering priceless artifacts across the seafloor. What's emerging is a race between destruction and discovery. New technologies like laser-assisted coral scanning allow researchers to peer through layers of growth without damaging the reef, revealing everything from submerged caves to Bronze Age pottery beneath. In the Red Sea, marine biologists discovered that certain corals secrete a protective biofilm over metal objects, slowing corrosion, a natural conservation method that could inspire new techniques for preserving underwater heritage. Yet the greatest threat isn't tools or time, it's ignorance. Less than 20% of the world's coral-encrusted peaks have been surveyed for cultural significance, leaving countless artifacts vulnerable to industries that see only minerals, not history. The irony is profound. These reefs began as colonizers, claiming mountains drowned by rising seas. Now they've become guardians, their intricate branches sheltering remnants of the very forces that submerged the land beneath them. Whether it's a Maya canoe hidden in Belize's Barrier Reef or a Roman amphora fossilized in Corsica's deepwater corals, these ecosystems hold memories not just in their own growth, but in the stories they've swallowed and saved. The challenge isn't just studying them, it's recognizing that every reef is both a vibrant present and a vault of the past, a duality as delicate as the polyps that built it. Submerged mountains don't just preserve lost landscapes, they guard shipwrecks like underwater time capsules, their cargo frozen in moments of disaster. One of the most astonishing discoveries came in 1901, when sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon a Roman-era wreck sprawled across a drowned mountainside. Among the marble statues and shattered pottery lay a corroded bronze lump that would rewrite history. When cleaned, it revealed a complex system of gears and dials, an ancient astronomical calculator now called the Antikythera mechanism. This intricate device, dating back to the 1st century B.C., could predict eclipses and track Olympic cycles with precision unmatched for over 1,000 years. It wasn't just treasure, it was proof that ancient technology far surpassed what historians had believed possible, hidden for centuries in the shadow of a sunken peak. The geology of these underwater mountains makes them accidental museums. Their steep slopes create turbulent currents that scatter lighter debris while anchoring heavier objects in place. Off the coast of Turkey, the Uluburun wreck, a Bronze Age ship that sank around 1300 BC, rests on a submerged ridge. Its cargo of Egyptian gold, Cypriot copper, and Mesopotamian glass beads meticulously preserved in layers. The ship's hull disintegrated long ago, but the mountain's contours held everything in place like a natural display case. Even more remarkable are the organic materials usually lost to time: jars of preserved figs, wooden writing tablets, and a golden scarab inscribed with Queen Nefertiti's name. These finds don't just illuminate trade routes, they reveal personal stories. A set of balance weights found near the wreck's stern belonged to a merchant who likely perished trying to save his most valuable tools. Not all wrecks are ancient. In the Java Sea, the wreck of the Belitung, a 9th-century Arab dhow, was discovered nestled against a seamount in 1998. Its cargo included 60,000 ceramic pieces from Tang Dynasty China, many untouched since the day they were packed. One bowl bore an inscription dating it precisely to the year 826, a rarity in maritime archaeology. But the real shock was the ship's construction. Unlike the sewn plank boats typical of the era, this vessel used iron nails, suggesting a previously unknown level of technological exchange between the Arab world and China. The mountain's slope acted as a shield, keeping the wreck intact while the open seabed around it eroded. The line between geology and archaeology blurs at these sites. Underwater volcanoes like Italy's Marseille seamount attract wrecks because their magnetic anomalies disrupt compasses, luring ships off course. In 2015, researchers found a 17th-century Spanish galleon on its slopes, its cannons still pointed skyward as if frozen mid-battle. Nearby, hydrothermal vents had coated the wreck's iron fittings in a protective layer of minerals, slowing corrosion. Even the mountain itself played a role in the disaster. Seismic activity likely triggered a sudden eruption, creating deadly currents that pulled the ship under. Perhaps the most poignant wrecks are those that mirror the mountain's own fate. Near the submerged peaks of the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary in Lake Huron, schooners from the 1800s lie broken but recognizable, their masts still towering over decks piled with lumber. These ships were hauling timber when storms drove them into the shallows, ironically, carrying the very material that once covered the now drowned mountains around them. Today, zebra mussels encrust their hulls, their filter feeding clearing the water to reveal eerie, well-preserved details like ship's wheels and cargo hooks. The real treasure isn't gold or artifacts, it's the way these wrecks transform mountains into storytellers. Each shipwreck is a snapshot of a single catastrophic moment, but together they weave a narrative of human ambition, natural forces, and the ocean's relentless power to both erase and preserve. As technology lets us explore deeper, who knows what other mechanisms, forgotten queens, or lost technologies might still lie hidden in the shadow of these drowned giants. Every culture that has ever lived near water seems to share the same haunting story, a great flood that swallowed the land, leaving only fragments of memory behind. The Babylonians wrote of the gods sending a deluge to wipe out humanity, sparing only Utnapishtim and his ark. The Maya Popol Vuh describes a world drowned by the wrath of the gods, while Aboriginal Australians sing of a time when the sea had no shore. These myths span continents and millennia, yet their similarities are too striking to dismiss as coincidence. What if these aren't just imaginative tales, but echoes of real catastrophes passed down through generations? Science offers compelling evidence that flood myths may be rooted in geological truth. Around 7,600 years ago, the Mediterranean Sea burst through the Bosporus Strait in a cataclysmic event known as the Black Sea Deluge. Seawater surged inland with 200 times the force of Niagara Falls, submerging a freshwater lake nearly 500 feet deep in months. Core samples from the Black Sea floor reveal a sudden shift from freshwater shells to saltwater species, while sonar maps show ancient river channels, ghostly remnants of drowned valleys where Neolithic farmers may have fled. This wasn't a slow creep of rising tides, but a violent, unforgettable disaster that survivors would have recounted for centuries. But the Black Sea isn't alone. In the Persian Gulf, archaeologists have identified a submerged river system older than the pyramids, its banks dotted with stone tools from hunter-gatherers who once camped there. When the last ice age ended, melting glaciers flooded this basin at a rate of over a mile per year, swallowing an area the size of Great Britain. For coastal communities, the retreating shoreline would have been a daily, visible trauma, a relentless theft of land that could easily evolve into legends of divine punishment. Even the geography of these drowned landscapes matches mythic descriptions. Plato's account of Atlantis, for instance, places the city beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. Right where he pointed, satellite imagery reveals a sunken plateau called Spartelbank, which was an island 12,000 years ago. The real test lies in the details. The K.H. Myers flood story speaks of a resinous substance raining from the sky before the waters rose, a possible description of volcanic ash from eruptions that triggered tsunamis. In India, the Mahabharata's account of Dwarka's sinking mentions the sea roaring like 1,000 bulls, matching geological evidence of sudden subsidence along the Gujarat coast. Even seemingly fantastical elements, like the Babylonian ark's cubic shape, make sense when you consider that reed boats of Mesopotamia were often built square for stability. These aren't just vague resemblances, they're specific, testable overlaps between myth and reality. Yet not all flood stories may stem from the same events. Some psychologists argue that catastrophic deluges are universal archetypes, a product of humanity's shared fear of the uncontrollable. After all, water is both life-giver and destroyer, a duality every agricultural society would respect. But when you compare the timelines, the evidence tilts toward memory, not metaphor. The oldest known flood myth, the Sumerian epic of Ziusudra, dates back to 2600 BC, just centuries after the Persian Gulf's flooding. Aboriginal tales of coastal drownings align with sea level rise data from 7,000 years ago. Even the Bible's Great Flood, long dismissed as allegory, finds parallels in sediment cores from the Black Sea that show a massive inundation around 5600 BC. The most haunting question isn't whether these floods happened, but how much was lost when the waters rose. Off the coast of Wales, fishermen still dredge up tree stumps from the sunken forest of Borth, where legend says the kingdom of Cantra Gwaelod vanished beneath the waves. In the Gulf of Cambay, sonar images show grid-like patterns that could be streets of a Harappan city swallowed by the Indian Ocean. These places weren't just landscapes, they were homes, temples, and gathering places whose names we'll never know. The myths might be all that's left of them, whispered warnings carried across centuries like flotsam from a drowned world. What emerges is a tapestry of truth and tale, where geology and folklore intertwine. The next time you hear an ancient flood story, listen closely. Beneath the gods and monsters, there might just be the distant roar of a rising tide, the panic of ancestors fleeing inland, and the indelible mark of a catastrophe so profound it shaped the stories we still tell today. 7,000 years ago, a farmer tending crops near what's now the Black Sea coast might have noticed something strange, the distant roar of water where there should only be silence. Within weeks or even days, that sound could have become a wall of saltwater surging inland, swallowing villages, drowning fields, and transforming a vast freshwater lake into the salty expanse we know today. This is the heart of the Black Sea Deluge hypothesis, a theory that one of humanity's oldest flood myths, Noah's Ark, might be rooted in a real geological catastrophe. The evidence starts with a layer of shells. In the 1990s, marine geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman drilled into the Black Sea floor and found a dramatic shift in sediment. Below a certain depth, the cores contained fossils of freshwater mollusks. Above that line, suddenly, saltwater species dominated. Radiocarbon dating placed this transition around 5600 BC, coinciding with the end of the last ice age. But the real smoking gun came from sonar maps of the seafloor, which revealed ancient river channels and shorelines nearly 400 feet below today's surface, ghostly contours of a lost landscape. What could have caused such a sudden change? The answer lies at the Bosporus, the narrow strait separating the Black Sea from the Mediterranean. During the Ice Age, sea levels were low enough to keep these bodies of water separate. The Black Sea was a freshwater lake fed by rivers but cut off from the world's oceans. Then, as glaciers melted, the Mediterranean began rising. Around 5600 BC, it breached the Bosporus in what Ryan and Pittman describe as a cataclysmic flood. Pouring 200 times the volume of Niagara Falls into the basin below. Computer models suggest the Black Sea's shoreline could have retreated a mile per day, forcing Neolithic farmers to abandon their fields and flee to higher ground. Not everyone accepts this theory. Critics argue the flooding was slower, more gradual, a rise of inches per year rather than a biblical deluge. They point to sediment cores from the Black Sea's northern coast, where freshwater species seem to have coexisted with marine life for centuries. But even if the flood wasn't instantaneous, its cultural impact might have felt apocalyptic. Imagine a community watching their ancestral lands vanish inch by inch over generations, each winter storm erasing another strip of coastline. The trauma of such loss would linger, woven into oral histories that eventually became legends. The parallels to Noah's Ark are uncanny. The Black Sea region is just 500 miles from Mesopotamia, where the earliest flood myths originated. The Epic of Gilgamesh, written 1,000 years before the Bible, describes a hero named Utnapishtim who builds a giant boat to survive a world-engulfing flood. A story strikingly similar to Noah's. Even details like the release of birds to find dry land appear in both accounts. Could these stories be distant memories of the Black Sea flood, passed down through generations of refugees? The implications go beyond mythology. This was the dawn of agriculture, when humans were transitioning from nomadic hunting to settled farming. The flood would have displaced thousands, possibly accelerating the spread of farming techniques into Europe as survivors migrated westward. Archaeologists have found sudden shifts in pottery styles across the Balkans around this time, hinting at the arrival of new cultural influences. The Black Sea catastrophe might not just have inspired myths, it could have reshaped the trajectory of human civilization. What's haunting is how these ancient echoes resonate today. As sea levels rise once again, we're left to wonder what stories our descendants will tell about the lost coasts of Miami or Jakarta. The Black Sea flood reminds us that humanity's oldest tales aren't just entertainment, they're survival manuals, etched with the indelible ink of lived catastrophe. Whether it unfolded over days or decades, the drowning of that freshwater lake left a mark deeper than any sediment layer, a scar on memory that still ripples through time. Deep beneath the jungles of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula lies a hidden world where time stands still, a maze of flooded caves so vast it could stretch from New York to Chicago if laid end to end. These aren't just geological wonders, they're submerged time capsules preserving Ice Age ecosystems with eerie perfection. Take Hoyo Negro, a sinkhole discovered by divers in 2007. Descending into its inky depths, they stumbled upon the skull of a teenage girl nicknamed Naya, who fell to her death here 13,000 years ago. Her bones lay alongside the remains of saber-toothed cats and giant ground sloths, creatures that hadn't shared the earth with humans for millennia. The cave's mineral-rich waters acted like a natural embalming fluid, keeping Naya's DNA intact, a genetic snapshot of some of the earliest people to reach the Americas. What makes these caves so extraordinary is how they trap entire moments in time. Unlike open-air sites where wind and rain scatter evidence, underwater caverns maintain pristine conditions. In Sac-Acton, the world's longest underwater cave system, paleontologists found a 50,000-year-old jaguar skeleton with claw marks still visible on the walls, as if the beast had tumbled in just yesterday. Nearby, ancient campfires sit perfectly preserved on ledges now 20 feet underwater, their charcoal layers dating back to when the caves were dry shelters for early humans. Even footprints endure. One set shows a child walking barefoot beside a canid, possibly a domesticated dog, their tracks frozen in clay that hardened before the waters rose. The real magic lies in the chemistry. As sea levels crept higher over centuries, freshwater met saltwater in these caves, creating a sterile, halocline layer where oxygen couldn't penetrate. This natural barrier halted decay, allowing organic materials that would normally disintegrate like wooden torches or woven baskets to survive for 12,000 years. In the Sistema dos Ojos caves, archaeologists recovered intact Maya pottery offerings submerged since 800 AD, their painted designs still vibrant. Even pollen grains linger in sediment cores, revealing which plants grew here when these chambers were sunlit grottos rather than lightless tombs. But the cave's greatest gift might be how they rewrite extinction timelines. Before divers explored these labyrinths, scientists believed most Ice Age megafauna died out before humans arrived in the Americas. Now the bones tell a different story. In the submerged caves of Quintana Roo, the remains of Gomfather's elephant-like beasts with shovel tusks were found alongside stone tools, proving humans hunted these creatures. Other chambers hold death assemblages, piles of bones where animals like giant armadillos and prehistoric bears became trapped, their struggles etched into the limestone walls. These aren't random accidents. The caves acted as natural pitfall traps, luring thirsty animals into steep sinkholes they couldn't escape. The challenge of exploring these flooded museums is as daunting as their treasures are rich. Technical divers must navigate pitch-black tunnels narrower than coffins, their passage sometimes stirring up silt that reduces visibility to zero, yet the rewards justify the risks. In 2021, a team in the Yucatan's Chan Hall cave system discovered a human skeleton with distinct cranial deformation, evidence of intentional head shaping practiced by ancient Maya elites. This find pushed back the timeline of the practice by thousands of years, suggesting cultural complexity far earlier than previously thought. Meanwhile, in Belize's Blue Hole, stalactites sampled from underwater caves revealed chemical signatures of droughts that may have contributed to the Maya collapse. As climate change raises sea levels again, these caves face new threats. Saltwater intrusion corrodes delicate bone surfaces, while tourism and development pollute once pristine groundwater. Yet they remain our best portal to a vanished world, a place where a single dive can bring face-to-face with a dire wolf's skull, a Paleo-Indian's footprint, or the ashes of a fire that burned when glaciers still covered Chicago. The real question isn't what else these caves hold, but how many more clues to our shared past will dissolve before we can reach them. The ocean's unexplored depths hold more mysteries than the surface of Mars, with an estimated 95% of the seafloor still unmapped in high resolution. Yet the race to uncover Earth's last hidden mountains is accelerating, fueled by cutting-edge technology and audacious expeditions. Take the Schmidt Ocean Institute's Volca 2 research vessel, which recently deployed an autonomous underwater vehicle to map the Mendocino Ridge off California, a submerged mountain range where tectonic forces are actively splitting the seafloor apart. In the coming years, similar missions will target the Gackel Ridge beneath the Arctic, where volcanic vents spew superheated water in complete darkness, and the Macquarie Ridge south of New Zealand, a geologically unstable zone that could rewrite our understanding of plate tectonics. These aren't just scientific curiosities, they're potential cradles of undiscovered life forms, with hydrothermal vents acting as natural laboratories for how life might exist on other planets. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing this exploration faster than anyone predicted. Machine learning algorithms now sift through decades of low-resolution sonar data, flagging anomalies that might be uncharted seamounts. In 2023, an AI trained by researchers at the University of Sydney identified 19,000 previously unknown underwater mountains, tripling the known count in a single study. These programs don't just find peaks, they predict their geology by analyzing subtle patterns in gravity fields measured by satellites. The result: expeditions can now target the most promising sites with surgical precision, like NASA's upcoming Orpheus mission, a robotic rover designed to explore the Haddle Zone, where submerged mountains plunge to depths exceeding 19,000 feet. The hunt for legendary lands like Atlantis is no longer the domain of fringe theorists. Modern archaeology employs sub-bottom profilers that use seismic waves to see through layers of sediment, revealing buried structures invisible to conventional sonar. Off the coast of Spain, a team using this technology recently mapped a series of concentric rings on the seafloor near Doñana National Park, a formation eerily reminiscent of Plato's descriptions. While skeptics argue it could be a natural formation, the discovery has reignited serious academic debate. Similarly, the Mediterranean's Balearic Promontory, a plateau now 1,000 feet underwater, shows evidence of ancient river channels and sinkholes that could have formed freshwater oases for prehistoric settlements. The key to solving these mysteries lies in interdisciplinary collaboration. Marine geologists working alongside historians to cross-reference sonar maps with ancient texts. What makes this era of exploration so transformative is the democratization of deep-sea discovery. Initiatives like the Seabed 230 project aim to crowdsource a complete map of the ocean floor by 2030, using data from commercial ships, research vessels, and even recreational yachts equipped with low-cost sonar. Meanwhile, advances in DNA sampling let scientists detect traces of human activity in sediment cores tools that could one day pinpoint submerged villages or trade routes. The submerged peaks we've yet to find aren't just geological features. They're potential Rosetta Stones for understanding climate history, human migration, and even the origins of life itself. Whether we'll ever hold Atlantis's ruins in our hands remains uncertain, but with each uncharted mountain revealed, the line between myth and history grows tantalizingly thinner. Beneath the waves, the silent giants of the deep submerged mountains and their fragile ecosystems face a modern onslaught that rivals any ancient cataclysm. Deep-sea mining operations now target these peaks for their rich deposits of cobalt, nickel, and rare earth metals, essential for smartphones and electric car batteries. The process is brutally simple. Massive machines scrape the seafloor, obliterating thousand-year-old coral forests and churning up sediment plumes that smother life for miles. In the Clarion-Clipperton Zone between Hawaii and Mexico, mining claims already cover an area twice the size of India, threatening seamounts that host species found nowhere else on Earth. One such casualty could be the ghostly Dumbo octopus, a deep-sea dweller named for its ear-like fins, which clings to the slopes of these underwater mountains. Its delicate habitat, shaped over millennia, could vanish in a single dredging operation. But mining isn't the only menace. Bottom trawling, dragging weighted nets across the seafloor, leaves scars deeper than clear-cutting a rainforest. Off the coast of Norway, trawlers targeting cod and shrimp have reduced entire cold-water coral reefs to rubble, their intricate structures pulverized in moments. The tragedy is compounded when these reefs grow on submerged archaeological sites. In the Adriatic Sea, trawl nets have snagged Roman amphorae and medieval anchors, smashing artifacts before archaeologists can document them. The math is grim. One pass of a trawl net can destroy what took nature 10,000 years to build. The fight to protect these underwater sanctuaries is as complex as the ecosystems themselves. International waters, where most submerged peaks lie, operate under a patchwork of agreements like the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. But enforcement is a nightmare. Only 1% of the high seas is monitored, leaving vast areas vulnerable to exploitation. Some nations are taking bold steps. Portugal recently extended its marine protected area around the Azores, safeguarding seamounts that act as way stations for migrating whales. Meanwhile, the Pacific island nation of Kiribati declared the Phoenix Islands protected area, a California-sized zone where fishing and mining are banned. These efforts show promise, but they're drops in an ocean-sized bucket. Technology offers a glimmer of hope. Autonomous underwater drones equipped with AI now patrol protected areas, identifying illegal trawlers by their acoustic signatures. The Ocean Cleanup Project has developed interceptor barriers that capture plastic waste before it smothers deep-sea habitats. Even blockchain is joining the fight, with companies like Bureau using it to trace sustainably caught fish from net to market. Perhaps most revolutionary are 3D printed artificial reefs, like those deployed off the coast of Monaco, which mimic the structure of natural seamounts to encourage coral regrowth. The stakes couldn't be higher. These submerged mountains aren't just geological features, they're living libraries. The bacteria found on their slopes could hold cures for antibiotic-resistant diseases, while their mineral formations record climate data spanning ice ages. When a trawl net rips through a shipwreck or a mining operation vacuums up ancient coral, we're not just losing history, we're erasing future possibilities. The choice we face mirrors that of the Doggerland inhabitants 8,000 years ago: adapt or vanish. But this time, the rising tide isn't natural, it's human greed, and only human ingenuity can turn it back. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea didn't just introduce readers to Captain Nemo and his fantastical submarine. It plunged them into a world where underwater mountains glowed with volcanic fire and ruins of lost cities loomed in the abyss. Published in 1870, Verne's novel tapped into a fascination that still grips us today: the idea that beneath the waves lie landscapes as dramatic as any on land, brimming with danger and discovery. His descriptions of the Atlantic's submerged peaks, where the Nautilus navigated forests of coral and crevices deeper than the Grand Canyon, weren't pure fiction. They were inspired by real marine surveys of his era, blending cutting-edge science with mythic storytelling. This alchemy of fact and fantasy set the template for how submerged mountains would haunt our collective imagination, not as inert geology, but as living stages for adventure and mystery. Fast forward to modern cinema, and the allure hasn't faded. James Cameron's The Abyss transformed the Cayman Trench into a cinematic playground. its fictional underwater oil rig perched on the edge of a chasm hiding extraterrestrial wonders. The film's climactic descent into the trench mirrored real deep-sea expeditions, right down to the crushing pressures and bioluminescent life forms. Even blockbusters like Aquaman leaned into the visual spectacle of submerged peaks, with the lost kingdom of Atlantis rising from seamounts draped in neon coral. These depictions aren't just eye candy, they reshape how audiences perceive the deep, turning scientific concepts like hydrothermal vents and abyssal plains into backdrops for heroism and wonder. But it's not all spectacle. Submerged mountains have also become metaphors in quieter, more introspective works. Hayao Miyazaki's Ponyo reimagined a flooded volcanic peak as the home of Fujimoto, a sorcerer grappling with humanity's impact on the ocean. The film's childlike wonder contrasts sharply with the grim realism of documentaries like Atlantic, where trawlers scrape seamounts bare, their destruction framed as a kind of underwater deforestation. This duality, mountains as realms of magic and monuments to human recklessness, reflects our own conflicted relationship with the deep. Literature, too, mines these landscapes for symbolism. In Kim Stanley Robinson's Antarctica, a scientist studying submerged peaks beneath the ice sheet muses that they're the Earth's memory, their layers holding climate records like pages in a book. Meanwhile, horror writers like Caitlin R. Kiernan use underwater ranges as settings for cosmic dread, where Lovecraftian entities slumber in caverns older than civilization. The common thread, these peaks aren't just scenery, they're mirrors. Whether as symbols of unexplored frontiers, environmental fragility, or existential awe, they force us to confront what we've lost and what we might still find. Even video games have joined the dive. Subnautica players navigate an alien ocean where towering seamounts hide crashed spaceships and predatory leviathans, turning real marine biology into survival gameplay. The indie game Soma takes it further, setting its existential horror story in a research station on the floor of the Atlantic, where the line between human and machine blurs as deeply as the lightless trenches outside. These interactive experiences make the abstract tangible players don't just learn about pressure gradients or chemosynthesis, they feel them as gameplay mechanics, forging an emotional connection no textbook could match. The irony is rich. We've mapped Mars in greater detail than our own ocean floor, yet submerged mountains dominate our stories in ways the Red Planet never could. Perhaps it's because they're close enough to touch yet just out of reach, or because their drowned histories echo our fears of climate collapse. Whatever the reason, one thing's certain: as long as these peaks remain half-explored, they'll keep surfacing in our art not as backdrops, but as characters in their own right, silent and enigmatic, demanding we listen. In the quiet villages of Fiji, elders still tell the story of Buratu, a mythical island paradise that sank beneath the waves long ago. According to oral traditions passed down through generations, Buratu was a land of unimaginable abundance, where fruit trees bent low with their weight and freshwater springs never ran dry. When the sea rose to claim it, survivors fled to higher ground, carrying with them the names of drowned villages and the sacred chants to honor them. For centuries, scholars dismissed Buratu as mere folklore until marine archaeologists discovered a submerged plateau near Vanuatu, its terraced slopes matching the descriptions in the legends. Core samples revealed layers of charcoal and cultivated soil, evidence that people had indeed lived here when sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower. Across the Pacific in Hawaii, the Kumulipo creation chant speaks of a time when the islands were born from the sea, their summits rising as the ocean retreated. Modern bathymetric maps reveal an astonishing truth. The Hawaiian archipelago is just the visible peak of an immense mountain range, with older islands like Maui and Kauai once connected by dry land during the Ice Age. Traditional navigation charts made from shells and twine depict these lost connections routes that would be impossible today but align perfectly with sonar data showing underwater ridges between the islands. The charts even describe now submerged freshwater springs that divers have since located off the coast of Molokai, their flow reduced to a trickle but still detectable after millennia underwater. The intersection of science and oral history grows even more striking in Scandinavia, where Norse sagas recount the sinking of Doggerland, a vast fishing ground between Britain and Denmark. The 13th century Gutta saga describes a prosperous island called Götaland that was swallowed by the sea in a single night, forcing its people to migrate to Sweden. Geological surveys confirm this area was dry land until around 6500 BC, when a massive underwater landslide triggered tsunamis that finished what rising seas had started. But what's most remarkable is how accurately the sagas describe the landscape. The amber-rich shores and forests where no man could walk match pollen samples from the seabed showing ancient pine and oak woodlands. Australia's First Nations cultures offer perhaps the most detailed accounts of coastal drownings. The Gunditjmara people of Victoria tell of a time when their ancestors could walk to what's now Tasmania, a memory backed by core samples showing the Bass Strait was dry land until around 10,000 years ago. Even more precise are the stories from the Kimberley region, where rock art depicts animals like the thylacine in landscapes now underwater. In 2020, researchers found submerged freshwater caves off the northwest coast exactly where oral histories placed them, their entrances adorned with rock carvings of fish and turtles now 30 feet below the tide line. These aren't isolated examples, they're threads in a global tapestry. The Sami people of Arctic Europe sing of a time when the Baltic Sea was a freshwater lake, a fact confirmed by sediment cores showing a sudden influx of saltwater around 7,000 years ago. In the Pacific Northwest, the Haida Nation's flood stories speak of villages disappearing as the ocean climbed the trees, coinciding with geological evidence of rapid sea level rise around 5000 BC. Even the Moken Sea nomads of Southeast Asia have oral maps detailing now drowned river mouths where their ancestors once anchored houseboats. What makes these traditions so extraordinary isn't just their accuracy, it's their longevity. The Maori Whakapapa genealogies in New Zealand trace back to specific canoes that arrived from now submerged islands in East Polynesia, names that match volcanic peaks identified on sonar maps. In Scotland, the Gaelic legend of the Kingdom of the Seals describes a sunken land near the Hebrides where divers recently found the remains of Neolithic stone circles. These stories weren't merely preserved, they were actively curated, refined over generations to encode vital survival knowledge: where to find freshwater lenses beneath saltwater, which coastal caves offered refuge from storms, how to navigate when familiar shorelines vanished. The lesson here is profound. Where Western science sees drowned landscapes as puzzles to be solved, indigenous knowledge systems recognize them as ancestors to be remembered. A Fijian elder once told researchers that Buratu wasn't lost, it was waiting. Its stories a compass for future generations navigating rising seas. As modern climate change accelerates coastal erosion, these oral histories are no longer just windows to the past. They're becoming guidebooks for resilience, proving that the most advanced technology sometimes resides not in satellites or sonar, but in the human voice carrying truths across thousands of tides. There's something primal about staring into the ocean's depths and imagining what might lie beneath, a pull as old as humanity itself. This obsession with sunken peaks and lost worlds isn't just curiosity, it's a reflection of our deepest psychological wiring. From ancient flood myths to modern-day sonar scans, we're drawn to these drowned landscapes because they represent the ultimate mystery, a realm where time stands still and the past remains tantalizingly out of reach. Psychologists call this the ruin value effect, the emotional resonance we feel when confronted with fragments of a forgotten world. It's why the thought of Atlantis captivates us more than a fully mapped mountain range ever could. These submerged peaks aren't just geological features, they're blank canvases for our imagination, where every crumbling wall or oddly shaped rock could rewrite history. Consider how differently we treat land versus water. A forest can hide ruins for centuries, but once they're swallowed by the sea, they take on an almost mythic quality. The ocean adds layers of danger and inaccessibility, transforming ordinary stones into relics of a lost epoch. This isn't just about archaeology, it's about our brains rewarding us for solving puzzles. The dopamine hit we get from uncovering a hidden truth is amplified when the discovery requires overcoming obstacles like crushing pressures or pitch-black darkness. The Yonaguni Monument off Japan's coast is a perfect example. Is it a natural formation or the remnants of an ancient civilization? The debate itself is addictive, feeding our need for narrative and resolution. But there's a darker undercurrent to this fascination. Sunken peaks force us to confront the fragility of human achievement. The ruins of Dwarka or the drowned forests of Doggerland are stark reminders that no civilization, no matter how advanced, is immune to nature's power. This taps into a universal anxiety, the fear of being forgotten. By studying these submerged worlds, we're not just exploring the past, we're rehearsing for our own potential future. Climate change makes this more than theoretical. As sea levels rise, we're faced with the unsettling realization that our cities could one day join Atlantis in the realm of legend. Yet there's also hope in this obsession. Every expedition to a drowned mountain is an act of defiance against oblivion. When marine archaeologists piece together the layout of a sunken settlement or geneticists trace human migration routes across now submerged land bridges, they're stitching torn pages back into the book of history. This work satisfies a profound human need to feel connected to those who came before us, even if only through the tools they left behind or the footprints they pressed into mud that later hardened to stone. The allure of these lost worlds also reveals how deeply storytelling is baked into our psyche. A mountain on land is just a mountain, but a submerged peak becomes a character in its own drama. It's no coincidence that cultures worldwide have flood myths or that Hollywood keeps returning to underwater ruins as backdrops for adventure. These landscapes are stage sets for our collective imagination, where the lines between science and myth blur in the most satisfying ways. The real magic happens when discovery catches up to legend, like when the Black Sea Deluge hypothesis gave scientific weight to Noah's Ark, or when Aboriginal oral histories led researchers to actual submerged freshwater springs. Ultimately, our fascination with sunken peaks is a mirror. It shows us how much we crave mystery in an era when so much of the world feels mapped and explained. These drowned mountains are the last frontiers on Earth, places where explorers can still feel the thrill of the unknown that Magellan or Columbus once did. They remind us that history isn't a static record but a living, breathing thing, and that the ocean, for all its power to erase, is also the greatest preservationist of all. The next time you dip your toes in the sea, remember, you're not just standing at the water's edge, you're standing on the shore of humanity's oldest and most enduring obsession, the longing to uncover what's just out of sight, waiting in the quiet dark below. In 2001, a team of Indian marine scientists made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. While conducting routine pollution studies in the Gulf of Cambay, their sonar equipment picked up something extraordinary: grid-like patterns and geometric structures covering an area larger than Manhattan, submerged under 120 feet of water. As dredgers brought up artifacts from the site, including pottery shards, stone tools, and even what appeared to be fragments of human bone, the implications were staggering. Carbon dating placed some items at nearly 9,500 years old, potentially predating Mesopotamia's earliest cities by thousands of years. Could this be evidence of a sophisticated civilization that thrived when much of the world was still in the Stone Age? The site's most tantalizing features emerged when side-scan sonar revealed what looked like the foundations of multi-story buildings arranged along wide, straight avenues. One particularly striking image showed a stepped structure resembling a pyramid or ziggurat, its corners aligning perfectly with the cardinal directions. Marine archaeologists noted that the layout mirrored descriptions of ancient cities in Hindu texts like the Mahabharata, which speak of golden kingdoms lost to the sea. But the real bombshell came when divers recovered pieces of worked wood, a rarity in Indian archaeology due to the tropical climate, with tool marks suggesting advanced carpentry techniques. If verified, these finds would rewrite the timeline of urban development in South Asia, hinting at a culture capable of large-scale construction millennia before the Great Pyramids. Not everyone embraced these claims. Critics pointed to the Gulf's violent currents, arguing the so-called structures could be natural geological formations shaped by underwater erosion. The National Institute of Ocean Technology initially reported finding evidence of a riverbed near the site, which they claimed supported the theory of a drowned settlement. However, independent geologists countered that the region's frequent earthquakes and sediment shifts could create deceptive patterns. The debate reached a fever pitch when some of the recovered artifacts were found to have mineral coatings typical of objects submerged for only a few centuries, not millennia. Skeptics accused the researchers of misinterpreting the site, possibly conflating multiple layers of history into a single, sensational narrative. Amid the controversy, one fact remained undeniable: the Gulf of Cambay was once dry land. During the last ice age, sea levels were low enough to expose a vast coastal plain where the Gulf now lies. Core samples taken from the seabed contained pollen from terrestrial plants and freshwater mollusks, proving this area was habitable between 12,000 and 7,000 years ago. What's less clear is whether humans built permanent settlements there. While the sonar images are compelling, the murky waters and strong currents have prevented full-scale excavations, leaving key questions unanswered. Recent advances in 3D sub-bottom profiling may finally settle the debate, allowing scientists to see through layers of silt without disturbing the fragile site. The most provocative clues come from local folklore. Fishermen in Gujarat have long spoken of palaces beneath the waves, recounting legends passed down through generations about a great city punished by the gods. These stories align eerily with geological evidence of a catastrophic flood around 7,500 years ago, when melting glaciers caused seas to rise rapidly in the northern Indian Ocean. Intriguingly, the disputed Cambay site lies near the mouth of the ancient Saraswati River, a mythical waterway described in Vedic texts that supposedly dried up millennia ago. If the submerged structures are genuine, they might represent the physical remains of a culture that inspired these ancient legends. As research continues, the Gulf of Cambay remains a puzzle wrapped in layers of sediment and skepticism. Whether it's ultimately proven to be the world's oldest city or a fascinating geological anomaly, the sight forces us to reconsider how much of human history might lie hidden on continental shelves now covered by rising seas. Every artifact pulled from its depths, whether a carefully chiseled stone tool or a controversially dated pottery fragment, adds another piece to a mystery that challenges our understanding of civilization's dawn. Until divers can safely conduct thorough excavations, these underwater ruins will keep their secrets, reminding us that the ocean's greatest treasures aren't gold or jewels, but the stories swallowed by time. The ruins of drowned mountains whisper a stark truth: civilizations rise and fall, but the planet endures. These submerged peaks aren't just relics of geological change, they're cautionary tales written in stone and sediment. Take Doggerland, the fertile plains that once connected Britain to Europe. When rising seas swallowed it 8,000 years ago, the hunter-gatherers who lived there had generations to adapt, retreating inland, shifting diets, and passing down flood stories that still echo in European folklore. Today, with sea levels rising 3 times faster than last century, coastal cities from Miami to Mumbai face similar threats, yet we're racing against a clock our ancestors never knew. The difference: they lacked satellite imagery and climate models, we lack excuses. The parallels between ancient drownings and modern crises go deeper than rising water. Santorini's volcanic collapse 3,600 years ago didn't just bury a Minoan city, it triggered tsunamis that destabilized trade networks across the Mediterranean, a reminder that environmental disasters ripple through economies. Fast forward to 2023, when Hurricane Ian's storm surge revealed a chilling pattern. Florida's flood maps, based on outdated sea level projections, underestimated the damage by billions of dollars. Like the Minoans, we're underestimating how interconnected our systems are. Submerged mountains teach us that resilience isn't just about seawalls. It's about anticipating cascading failures in food supplies, energy grids, and global markets. Yet there's hope in these lessons. The Polynesians, whose islands faced constant erosion, didn't just flee, they innovated. They built floating gardens to grow crops in brackish water and developed salt-resistant taro varieties, adapting to their changing world rather than fighting it. Modern engineers are taking cues from this ingenuity. The Netherlands' Room for the River program mimics natural floodplains instead of resisting them, while Bangladesh's floating schools and hospitals echo ancient strategies for living with water. Even coral reefs, which thrive on drowned peaks, offer blueprints. Their complex structures dissipate wave energy better than concrete barriers, inspiring designs for hybrid artificial reefs now being tested in the Maldives. The most unsettling lesson lies in what we've already lost. When the Sunda Shelf flooded 12,000 years ago, early humans carried memories of drowned forests and sacred caves into their new homelands. Today, as Pacific Islanders document ancestral fishing grounds vanishing beneath the waves, they're creating digital archives of oral histories, modern-day flood myths for future generations. But archives won't stop the water. The Black Sea Deluge hypothesis proves that societies can recover from catastrophe, but only if they adapt fast enough. Right now, we're torn between 2 timelines: the slow grind of policy debates and the rapid melt of glaciers. What drowned mountains ultimately reveal is a paradox: the same forces that destroy also create. Zelandia's submerged peaks are now nurseries for species found nowhere else, just as Louisiana's sinking bayous nurture shrimp nurseries even as homes drown. The challenge isn't just to mourn lost landscapes, but to recognize that adaptation isn't defeat, it's evolution. As the ocean reclaims more coastlines each year, we're left to wonder, will we be remembered as the generation that ignored the warnings, or the one that finally learned to read the tides? The answer isn't written in stone. It's etched in the layers of sediment piling up on the seafloor, waiting for whatever comes next. From the legendary spires of Atlantis to the sprawling drowned continent of Zelandia, these submerged peaks aren't just relics of geological upheaval, they're time machines. Each sunken slope and buried valley holds fragments of stories we're only beginning to decipher. The footsteps of Doggerland's last hunters preserved in ancient mud, the charred hearths of Sahul shelf campsites now home to luminescent jellyfish, the whispered warnings of indigenous oral histories that predicted discoveries modern science would later confirm. What makes these drowned landscapes so captivating isn't just their mystery, but their humility. They force us to confront a truth we often ignore, that the ground beneath our feet is never as permanent as it feels. Consider how much we've reclaimed from the deep already. The Antikythera mechanism rewrote our understanding of ancient technology. The ruins of Dwarka bridged myth and history. The submerged forests of the Caribbean revealed ecosystems lost to time. Yet for every answer, the ocean offers a dozen new questions. What undiscovered cities lie beneath the Gulf of Cambay's silt? Could the Baltic's ghostly stone circles be remnants of a forgotten Neolithic culture? And will the next generation of sonar scans finally pinpoint Plato's Atlantis not as a fairy tale, but as a real Bronze Age society swallowed by the Mediterranean's fury? The real magic lies in how these discoveries reshape our identity. For centuries, we've imagined ancient peoples as primitive or disconnected. But the more we uncover their precision navigation across now drowned land bridges, their adaptations to rising seas, their enduring flood myths, the more we recognize their brilliance. These weren't just survivors of catastrophe, they were keen observers of nature's rhythms, innovators who transformed disaster into opportunity. As we face our own era of climate upheaval, their legacy isn't just archaeological, it's instructional. Technology continues to peel back the waves with breathtaking speed. AI now sifts through decades of sonar data, flagging anomalies human eyes might miss. Synthetic aperture radar can detect buried structures under layers of sediment, while deep-sea drones beam back crystal-clear images of artifacts untouched for millennia. Yet for all our advancements, the ocean keeps its deepest secrets guarded. The Yonaguni Monument's terraced walls still spark debate. The Baltic Sea's Stonehenge remains just out of reach. And who knows what else hides in the Haddle Zone, where pressure would crush a submarine like tin foil. This isn't just about the past, it's about our future. As sea levels rise, today's coastal cities could become tomorrow's underwater ruins. Will Miami's Art Deco hotels one day be explored by archaeologists in submersibles? Will Venice's canals fossilize into labyrinthine caves? The submerged peaks we study today are more than curiosities. They're mirrors reflecting our own fragile relationship with the planet. So what's next in this grand underwater detective story? Maybe a diver will stumble upon another Antikythera-like marvel, frozen in the grip of coral. Maybe a farmer's sonar will reveal a lost city beneath his rice paddies, as happened in India's Gulf of Combat. Or perhaps the biggest revelation is still ahead, a discovery so profound it rewrites not just chapters, but entire volumes of human history. One thing's certain, the ocean isn't done sharing its secrets. With every expedition, every breakthrough, we're not just uncovering lost worlds, we're rediscovering our own place in Earth's ever-changing story. Now it's your turn. Which submerged mystery fascinates you most? Doggerland's vanished hunters, the Caribbean's eerie blue holes, or something we haven't even found yet? Drop your thoughts below, and if you've enjoyed this deep dive into Earth's hidden peaks, don't forget to subscribe. The next adventure is always just beneath the surface.